All right, today we're going to talk about 12 warning signs of internet addiction in your spouse, friend, or loved one. I know normally we did videos on how to identify it within ourselves. Maybe sometimes if we see it within someone else, we can then identify it with ourselves. We see some commonality between you and maybe someone that you love or someone close to you. So recognize the warning sign of addiction, internet addiction in your spouse or loved one is the first step in your helping them help themselves. The following warning signs should serve as a general guideline for you to determine whether or not your spouse, family member, or friend may have a problem. Does your loved one spend a lot of time alone with their computer or smartphone on a regular basis? Become defensive when you confront them with their behavior? Seem either unaware of what they've been doing or attempt to deny it? This is a lot of times what makes it helpful if we point something out. Sometimes the person will get defensive. In severe cases of addiction, they have what's called intervention. This is when you gather a bunch of loved ones and friends together, and I believe they all write something down on a piece of paper to tell the person how their addiction has negatively affected them over the years. And a lot of times it's met with a lot of resistance because it's hard to come to grips of having an addiction. Sometimes we feel weak. Because I have a carb addiction and I find it very similar to nicotine because I go through the same withdrawals when I'm off of sugar. And of course, sugar being any carbohydrate. So a lot of times it's hard for me. I kind of feel weak, like who am I as a man to be addicted to sugar? It seems like a very childish addiction to have, but it is what it is. And we have to face it and we don't want to justify it at our own detriment. So a lot of people are unaware, ourselves included. We don't see ourselves, even literally in a mirror, we don't see ourselves the way other people see us. We see a reverse image of ourselves. So people can see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. This is the benefit of having friends and loved ones. We want people around us that are going to bring these things to our attention. Prefer spending time with their device or on the internet rather than with other people. This does lead back to isolation. Lose internet and other previously important activities such as friends, sports, work, hobbies, and exercise. This comes as addiction rewires our brain to see the addiction as something that's needed for survival. Our dopamine is there for survival, to create relationships, to explore, to accomplish goals. That's what dopamine is for. It's, keeps us curious and keeps us moving forward. But if it's hijacked by an addiction, that addiction will make our brain think that the addictive substance or behavior is needed for survival. This is why, someone who's addicted to carbohydrates, I think, what kind of life is this? You hear people say there's no variety, very restrictive to do a carnivore or healthy keto diet, but that's the addiction talking. We just seem to feel that we can't live without it, a person who's addicted to carbs. So, yeah, and you lose, when the addiction gets really bad, you lose interest in everything. If you look at people who are addicted to illicit drugs, this is a great example. They lose all their relationships. They lose hygiene. A lot of times they lose their clothing. And a lot of them, unfortunately, become homeless. Appear to be more socially isolated, moody, or irritable. Seem to be establishing a second life with new and different friends from whom they met online. This is a big deal with social media, especially. People have friends, but they're not really friends. They're just acquaintances that they know. They've never met them. For all they know, they're not even who they say they are, especially with AI now and deepfake. This can get even more out of hand. We can have more kids at risk of predators, etc. Spend greater amounts of time online and attempt to cover or minimize the screen or hide the phone when you come in the room. This is all part of kind of like shame, feeling guilty. It's not even so much that they're afraid you're gonna catch them. It's just they kind of know they have a problem. And so, you walking in is like their conscience walking in. And a lot of times people with addiction will start to look down on the people who are around them because they feel like you're judging them. You're putting yourself on a pedestal. You're the moral authority. But this is just a guilty conscience. And it's actually good because they are kind of more, self-aware enough to know that what they're doing is not good for them. Talk about their time on the computer incessantly and seem to draw meaning in their life from this activity. Exhibit signs that their work or school performance is suffering. Perhaps they were fired, grades are slipping, or their household responsibilities are neglected. I just want to point out that this is kind of tied, in my opinion, to ADHD. I know a lot of people think they have ADHD But we have to understand that ADHD is a disorder. It's a diagnosis. This is something that a professional needs to diagnose. A lot of people have what I would call internet-induced ADHD. This is, we become so used to looking at short sound bites and short clips that we reduce our patience or ability to actually sit and listen to long talks or actually sit through a movie. I know, myself included, sometimes even watching a movie gets boring and you have to pick up your phone. To be diagnosed with ADHD, it has to be to the extent to where it negatively impacts your life. So this is very important to understand, because a lot of times we can conflate an addiction to a real ADHD diagnosis. So school performance suffering, and perhaps you were fired and grade slipping, things like that. This can also be a symptom of ADHD. So have to be careful with that. We don't bark up the wrong tree. Talk about their time on the computer incessantly and seem to draw meaning in their life from this activity. This was repeated. Said that already. Have legal problems as a result of their internet behavior. For example, the loss of child custody, divorce, or sexual harassment charges at work due to downloading haram websites, etc. Chatting or cheating. If these warning signs sound similar to the signs of having an affair, that's because they are. Internet addiction is a lot like having an affair with a computer, along with their relationships formed online. It's the same process whenever a person withdraws from their main source of support, spouse, friends, family, and finds it elsewhere, in this case, on the internet. So, yeah, a lot of people will tell you they do feel uncomfortable if they're talking to someone and they're looking on their phone, or maybe if they're on their phone whenever they're with you. It does kind of elicit or draw out the same feelings of being cheated on, or feeling that you're being left out, or you're being, that the phone is being prioritized over them. Children feel this, adults even feel this. So keeping that in mind, this is also another way of how it can negatively affect relationships. So one of the things to do as we wrap this here to help with internet addiction is to not reach for it when you're bored. Allow yourself to be bored. Don't keep your phone on your person. Try to keep it in a place that requires you to make effort to get to it. Now, of course, this is if you have an addiction, and you can pretty much tell if you do or not. Just check your screen time on your phone, or if you have an Android, whatever the equivalent to that is. Find out how many hours a day you're spending on your phone. And you can even check and see what happens when you have a lull in the day. If you're sitting down, if you're in line, if you're in the bathroom, if you're ever in a situation to where you feel bored, or you have, like I said, you feel a lull and you immediately grab for your phone, this is a problem. So try not to keep it on you where you're on autopilot, just picking up the phone every few seconds when you get bored. Don't have it on you if you're watching a lecture or watching a movie. Try to get in the habit of allowing yourself to be bored or to have to engage in something that's important. So also, if you're doing schoolwork, or if you're at work or doing any kind of cognitive job, you want to make sure that when you take a break, you don't break with the internet, or you don't break with some artificially stimulating dopamine activity or substance, because dopamine is required for you to work or study in the first place. So you don't want to go and then do some activity or eat some substance that's going to give you an heightened release of dopamine, because then you may become drained. Your brain is going to start, eliciting all kinds of other neurotransmitters and chemicals to downregulate the dopamine, because it's trying to keep a balance, trying to keep homeostasis. And then you're not going to have the energy to go back and do your work. You're not going to have you're not going to have the mental capacity to go back and sit and study and focus for another 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever it is you're doing. So try to be bored on your breaks. Get up, go for a little walk, maybe do some push-ups. Physical activity has been shown to help with the dopamine withdrawal, or the dopamine downregulation, as they would say. Try to be bored. Can't stress it enough. Being bored is one of the easiest, well, maybe not easy, because you're going to crave the internet or crave whatever thing you're addicted to, but it is one of the great cures of having an addiction to these dopamine stimulating substances and behaviors. So, Charla, hopefully this has been beneficial. Not sure how the YouTube algorithm is pushing or promoting this. I know a lot of brothers and sisters really aren't into health, mental health, and these type of things, but hopefully we can push this forward. It's super serious because it does affect our relationships. It affects our Iman, because, you know, how we feel and how we take care of our body eventually affects our brain, affects our capacity to do and be our best. So, inshallah, share, like, subscribe, do all the things. And may Allah reward you for being curious and keep tying your camel. Assalamu alaikum.